No, absolutely. And to an extent, I was listening to, who was it? Mark Andreessen,
Mark
the
Andreessen?
guy Andreessen. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. He was on Joe Rogan a while ago. I had a road trip, so I was listening to that, and he said that progressivism and modern, let's say, wokeism functions a lot like a religious society,
Hmm.
and in a lot of ways, it's based on American Evangelical Protestantism, and I think a big part of their ethos, their that religious element to it is you have to prove yourself willing to deny basic realities about life. You have to be willing to basically prostrate yourself in front of the altar of mediocrity and say that 450-pound people are beautiful. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I
it's
think that's exactly right. And I wrote a tweet about this at one point where this was more in relation to like certain people and ways of being, where we've now kind of taken what I would call the fringe and elevated into the center. And it's people are confusing the acceptance of fringe ideas and not wanting to persecute people on the fringe with the archetypes that we look up to in our ideals and we model and we have historically modeled ourselves after. And it's very, and this is where I think we lose this ideal of beauty, that like that children can obviously recognize these things, but when you start telling children that the person who runs, you know, doesn't try their hardest, doesn't run as fast, doesn't have as nice of a stride, is at the same level or the same value as somebody who has been running and is a world champion marathon runner their entire life. It's like it's just bullshit. It confuses the children, I believe.
yeah, absolutely. It's just a coordinated denial of reality, and everybody involved in it knows that they're denying reality. At least 99% of them do. But the denial of it is it's a profession of faith,
Yeah.
and that's important to maintain their social cohesion, is to have those professions of faith. And of course, nobody's going to say, well, obviously we're just saying this to pass this course or whatever. Like
And
it's
this is
it's
like
just
an
social.
aspect of a defining aspect of religions themselves, right? You like almost every religion I can think of. In Christianity, it's that Jesus rose from the dead, right? Impossible thing, but yes, he rose from the dead. We all agree this is core belief, and everybody has to accept it. Scientology is a fun one. To get into the inner circle, you learn about things like, oh, we're all made up of thetans, and there was a 747 that brought everybody here to Earth. I don't know it that well, but it's like there's all of these sort of like obvious denials of what anybody would normally accept of reality outside of the religious circle, and this denial of beauty and value seems to be the one that the woke have like decided is their sort of thing that they're going to hang their hat on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that aspect of it, of every religious group having that one, let's say, pivotal fringe belief, it's very interesting because I wouldn't say that's every religion, but it's almost every religion today. And this is going to be a tangent here, but I'll get there.
This is what we're here for, man. Go on it.
All right, so we talk about like modern leftist wokeism, so on and so forth. That's based on a rejection, like a deep rejection of everything about evangelical Protestant Christianity. They just take everything and flip it on its head. As a result, it's basically just the same, reversed. In terms of structure and philosophy and framing in particular, it's almost identical. And modern, let's say, Protestant revolution on, then Christianity in general, there's a large focus on the crisis of faith and the the method of achieving faith and professing faith and just faith, Luther's faith alone idea in and of itself just changed the entire course of Christian doctrine and Christian thought and framing. However, if you look at earlier pagan religions as well as early Christianity, they were addressed in such a way by their adherents that they were just seen as self-evident. Everything about, let's say, the Greek pantheon, self-evident. Japanese Shintoism, the idea that there were gods that had at some point um, shit on fields and made them fertile. That was 100% self-evident to them because the field was fertile. That's how it happened. Hinduism was self-evident and revealed by psychedelic experiences. All of these things just were seen as factual, and we're merely accommodating our beliefs and ritual practices
Well,
around them.
and I think what you're describing here is what we've attempted to do since the Enlightenment is the separation of a description of objective reality through science or rationality and religion, where what you're describing is that religion back then was how you describe the world in its entirety.
Yes, it just was. That was just an element of the world in the same way that there are trees and rocks and the sky. Was there were gods, and to early Christians who still hadn't reached the uh, let's say Enlightenment framework in any way, it was the same thing. It was simply self-evident. What do you mean you don't believe in this? You just haven't heard about it yet. That was the only way that it was framed, was people who were unbelieving or pagan or so on and so forth just hadn't heard about the faith yet. And that's one element of the age of exploration that a lot of people misunderstand. They tend to, we secularize a lot in history now, and one of the things that we've secularized are the religious motives behind going out and exploring and converting people. And a lot of times people today, especially even like mainstream educational material, posits that the religious justification was just a sort of, you know, appeasement to the church or to the public in order to get more resources, land, so on. But at the same time, there were the people that were going on these trips, the missionaries that were going with explorers and profiteers and whatnot, were very much passionate about their project, and the idea, the very framing of that, the only thing that everybody in the world needs is to hear the story of Jesus, essentially. Just they need to hear the story. And we tend to pretend that that wasn't the case, that they were operating on that same faith alone assumption and framework that came after the Protestant Reformation.
I mean, this is comparable to like educational initiatives that the UN or what other body says, like, oh, we've got to go to these third world countries and make sure everybody gets properly educated.
Yeah, it's the thing about the UN is that they do in a lot of ways the same thing as the missionaries, but with whatever prerogatives are out there now. You know, if they could get to North Sentinel Island, believe me, their first priority would be teaching them feminism.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I forget the guy's name who runs this the Department of State right now, but he said, you know, LGBTQ plus initiatives are a top priority for the State Department in advancing the rights in, you know, foreign countries.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I guarantee you 99.99% of Turkmenistan does not care at all about that, nor does their government. They're just indifferent. They don't understand it because it's not an element of the culture. Maybe Turkmenistan isn't a great example, but let's say like Uruguay or Malaysia, something like that. It's just not a priority for them. But as far as we're concerned, the Western world order is concerned, they just haven't heard the good word yet.